So I want you to imagine that you are an executive at a major record label.
Okay.
And it's 1991.
Right. So pre-internet, pre-everything.
Exactly. You check your office voicemail, and you're expecting to hear from industry agents or like polished producers.
Usual suspect.
Yeah, the usual suspects pitching their highly refined, media-trained artists. But instead, what you get is this, it's like a transmission from the void.
Oh, wow.
You hear a 9-year-old kid from what was, statistically, the murder capital of the United States, just aggressively and relentlessly rapping into the machine.
Into a voicemail.
Into a voicemail. No backing track, no studio mixing, just raw, unpolished, desperate ambition crackling through this landline phone.
That is wild.
And I mean, most executives would just delete that message without a second thought, right? But one local executive didn't hit delete.
Right.
And that single saved voicemail effectively rewrote the entire DNA of modern music.
That is just, I mean, that's the perfect entry point for what we are examining today. Welcome to the deep dive, everyone. We are exploring this really fascinating cultural essay. It's titled A Kid Named Dwayne, and it was originally published on the Rotation Report.
Yeah, and our objective today is not to just like read a Wikipedia page to you.
Definitely not.
Or walk through a standard chronological biography of Dwayne Michael Carter Jr.
Right, who the world obviously knows globally as Lil Wayne.
Right. The goal is to dissect how a specific, highly volatile ecosystem forged this unstoppable artistic force.
Because even if you are not a hip-hop historian, or frankly, even if you never listen to rap music at all, you really need to stick around for this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because at its core, this is a masterclass in how to outgrow the limitations that society places on you.
It's about taking the exact things meant to silence you and turning them into a microphone.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to really understand the man, we first have to understand the specific, chaotic, vibrant ecosystem that forged him.
Yeah, what's fascinating here is that to comprehend the magnitude of what Dwayne Carter achieved, the essay immediately forces us to confront the reality of New Orleans in the late 1980s and early 1990s.
Right. And it was intense.
It was. The author doesn't mince words at all. This was a profoundly dangerous environment.
Yeah.
Statistically, as you mentioned, it held the title of the murder capital of the U.S. at the time.
Wow.
But there's a more insidious layer to this danger, which was the broader national reaction to it.
Which was essentially a collective shrug, right? I mean,
Right.
The text points out this really tragic dynamic. Because this extreme violence and poverty were localized in the Deep South,
Right.
specifically within Black communities, the rest of the nation just often overlooked it entirely.
They completely ignored it.
Yeah, and the essay uses a phrase that really stuck with me. It says, this Southern voice was deemed negative and wrong by the cultural gatekeepers of the time.
Yeah, that dismissal is a crucial sociological baseline for this entire story.
Yeah.
You have the national media and these coastal music industries in New York and Los Angeles looking at the South and essentially redlining it from cultural relevance.
Right, like nothing important is happening down there.
Exactly. They decided the narratives emerging from New Orleans just didn't fit their established paradigm of what mattered.
Right.
But that marginalization was built on a massive underestimation of the city's historical resilience.
Oh, 100%.
Right.
Because you can't talk about New Orleans without talking about the heartbeat underneath the concrete.
Right.
The danger was the surface, but the foundation of the city is undeniably its cultural output. I mean, the source reminds us that this is the birthplace of jazz.
Yes.
It is the epicenter of Mardi Gras.
And there's a specific historical detail the author includes that feels incredibly vital here.
Oh, about the synthesis.
Yes. Mardi Gras, as celebrated by the marginalized communities there, grew from the synthesis of Black people and Native American Indians coming together.
Right.
Think about the implications of that historical synthesis for a second.
It's huge.
You have these marginalized groups facing systemic erasure, creating their own massive, undeniable, and vibrant celebrations.
Right. It's not just a party.
No. Music and performance in New Orleans were never just passive background noise or simple entertainment. They were active survival mechanisms. The essay states it perfectly. It says, no matter what the situation is, the city moves to its own beat. Music is the exhaust valve for the pressure of living in that environment.
I really like that. I actually kind of picture the cultural ecosystem of New Orleans at that time as a literal pressure cooker.
Okay, yeah.
You know, you have the intense heat of physical danger and then this heavy lid of national marginalization pushing down.
Right, the gatekeeper is keeping it sealed.
Exactly. And the label of being a murder capital trapping everything inside. And that kind of pressure is terrifying.
Yeah.
But it also creates an environment capable of producing flavors and art that simply cannot be replicated anywhere else.
That's a great way to put it.
So the hip-hop emerging from the wards of New Orleans wasn't just like a new genre. It was the steam screaming out of the valve.
Wow.
It was the city demanding visibility, saying, "We are here."
And stepping directly out of that steam is a child who absorbed the absolute extremes of that pressure cooker firsthand.
Yeah.
The author provides a really chilling anchor point for his early life. Before his career even truly begins, he survives a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
God, that's just...
I know. We really have to pause and absorb the gravity of a child brushing up against mortality in such a visceral, violent way.
It completely frames the sheer urgency of everything that follows.
Yeah.
I mean, when you almost lose your life before you even hit double digits, the concept of waiting your turn.
Or playing by traditional industry rules.
Yeah, it just goes out the window. You develop this absolute refusal to be ignored, which I guess brings us right back to that voicemail.
It does. The transition from the sociological context of New Orleans to the individual audacity of a 9-year-old boy is staggering.
It really is.
Let's analyze the psychology of leaving that voicemail for Brian Baby Williams for a second.
Yeah, let's do it.
A voicemail is a one-way transmission.
Right.
You have no audience to read, no immediate feedback loop to adjust your performance. You are projecting your talent into a void, relying on pure, unadulterated self-belief that the person on the other end will recognize your value.
It's basically setting up a flare in pitch blackness.
Exactly.
And the craziest part is that it actually worked. I mean, Brian Williams didn't just listen to it. The source notes, he actively sought this kid out.
He did.
He tracked him down and initiated what the essay describes as a deeply formative father-son bond at Cash Money Records.
And the localized nature of this mentorship is a direct result of that national neglect we discussed earlier.
Oh, so?
Well, because major labels in LA and New York were not sending A&R scouts to the New Orleans projects to find child prodigies, right?
Right, they'd already written the region off.
Exactly. So the local infrastructure had to become the launch pad. Figures like Baby and independent outfits like Cash Money Records had to build the rocket themselves.
Okay, but wait, let's look at this critically for a second.
Sure.
Giving a 9-year-old a record deal sounds less like mentorship and more like potential exploitation.
It's a valid concern.
Because we've seen the child prodigy narrative play out in the entertainment industry countless times, and the burnout rate is horrific.
It usually doesn't end well.
Right. Kids get handed massive solo platforms way too early, the pressure crushes their development, or they become this novelty act that the label just discards when puberty hits. So how was this situation fundamentally different?
It is entirely fair to view early industry entry through a lens of skepticism, for sure. But the difference here lies in the specific developmental structure that Brian Williams placed him in.
Okay.
He did not hand Dwayne a solo album and throw him to the wolves. He strategically embedded him within a local ecosystem. Cash Money created the Hot Boys, pairing this 9-year-old rookie with established older local talent like Juvenile, BG, and Turk.
Ah, okay. So it was less of a solo spotlight and more of a hip-hop apprenticeship.
Precisely. It was an intensive, highly competitive rap academy.
Yeah.
He wasn't the focal point. Juvenile and BG were the established frontrunners carrying the commercial weight of the group.
Right.
Wayne was the student. He was forced to observe, adapt, and earn his minutes on the microphone.
And the group dynamics outlined in the essay are so fascinating because they reveal how restriction breeds innovation.
Yes, absolutely.
Because the text notes that Wayne initially only got his time on songs at the very end.
Right.
He was just sharing verses or just taking the outro as the track faded out.
And if you look at the mechanics of artist development, that severe limitation was a masterstroke of training.
Oh, you mean?
Well, when you are given only 8 bars at the tail end of a track that has already been dominated by heavyweights like Juvenile, you cannot afford a single waste syllable.
Oh, I see.
Your margin for error is 0.
You have to be hyper-aggressive.
Exactly.
Think of it like a character actor in a massive blockbuster movie who only gets one scene.
Right.
They know they aren't the top billing, so they have to completely chew the scenery. They have to engineer their performance so that when the audience leaves the theater, that one tiny explosive moment is literally the only thing they were talking about.
And that engineering of a moment leads to one of the most significant cultural inflection points in early Southern hip-hop.
Oh, I know where this is going.
The track, Back That Ass Up.
Yes. The ultimate scene-stealing performance.
It really is.
I mean, this is Juvenile's flagship song. It is a monumental, seismic hit. But at the very end, in the outro, Lil Wayne drops a freestyle.
Yeah.
And the essay quotes the specific lines. It says, after you back it up and stop, drop it like it's hot.
And from a mere handful of seconds at the end of someone else's song, he birthed a cultural slogan that completely permeated the global lexicon.
Yeah, drop it like it's hot became a phrase used universally.
Far beyond the confines of rap music.
He proved he didn't need a 4-minute song to change the culture. He literally just needed 5 seconds of real estate.
And that level of lyrical efficiency is terrifying for other artists.
Oh, I bet.
Because when you can consistently hijack the cultural conversation from the back of the room, eventually the room itself isn't big enough to hold you.
Which brings about what the author terms a necessary evil in the world of hip-hop.
Right. The Hot Boys had to disband.
And I find the author's framing of this breakup incredibly refreshing.
How so?
Well, in music history, group splits are almost always framed around intense internal beef, right? Like jealousy or some huge financial betrayal.
Always drama.
Yeah, always drama. But the essay explicitly states that the Hot Boys didn't fracture out of malice.
Right.
The text actually says everyone was wanted equally. But it just became undeniable that the shining light was Lil Wayne.
The phrasing the author uses is vital here. They say, he didn't fight for attention, he outgrew the room.
Wow.
It was a matter of pure artistic physics. His gravitational pull simply became too massive to be contained within a quarter of a group's dynamic.
Yeah.
The breakup was just an organic, inevitable expansion.
And his solo ascent had a profound geographical impact, too.
It did.
Because the source touches on No Limit Records, which was another legendary New Orleans label that had sort of pried the door open for the South in the early 90s, forcing the national charts to finally acknowledge the region.
Right.
But Cash Money, driven by Wayne's solo run, they didn't just walk through the door. They kicked it entirely off its hinges.
He absolutely cemented the South as a permanent, dominant fixture in the national mainstream.
Yeah.
But conquering the traditional album charts wasn't the end game for him. In fact, it was just the prologue to a complete paradigm shift in how music was distributed and consumed. If we connect this to the bigger picture, we are entering the era the essay highlights as mixtape Wayne.
Right. This is where the story shifts from, like, a really talented artist to a full-on industry-breaking phenomenon.
Exactly.
Because the traditional music industry cycle back then was incredibly rigid. Gatekeepers totally dictated the pace.
Very slow.
Right. An artist would spend months in the studio, release a polished album, spend a year touring, take a break, and then eventually maybe return to the studio. It was a slow corporate machine designed to maximize profits and control the narrative.
And Lil Wayne looked at that slow corporate machine and basically decided to completely bypass it.
Yeah, he did.
He took his music directly to the internet, releasing this relentless, prolific series of mixtapes that circumvented label executives entirely.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though.
Right.
Because I always conceptualize this mixtape era as a hostile corporate takeover, but executed purely through art.
Oh, I like that.
You know? Like in finance, a hostile takeover is acquiring a company against the wishes of its current management.
Right.
Wayne did that to the radio and the broader culture. The essay explicitly notes the mechanism he used. It says he rapped over your favorite beats and made them his.
Let's delve into the actual mechanics of what that means for the listener and the industry at the time.
Okay.
Because he wasn't spending millions of dollars on original production for these mixtapes.
No.
He was downloading the instrumentals of the biggest #1 hit songs in the country songs owned by massive established artists, and he was recording his own vocals over them.
Which is just, imagine the sheer swagger required to do that.
It's unheard of.
You hear a massive Jay-Z track or like a huge R&B hit that is just saturating the airwaves. You don't try to make a song that sounds like it.
Right.
You literally take the exact sonic real estate of that hit, rap over it, and release it to the internet for free.
Yes.
And the hostile takeover part is that he would consistently out-rap the original artist. He would prove undeniably that his version was superior.
He essentially evicted the biggest artists in the world from their own sonic properties.
That's exactly it.
It was a form of reverse musical colonialism.
Oh, wow.
The marginalized artist from the overlooked South was colonizing the mainstream radio hits of the coastal elites.
I remember this so vividly. you would be driving in your car,
Yeah.
right? And a beat would drop on the radio, and your brain wouldn't even register the original artist who actually paid for the production.
Nope.
Your first instinct would be, wait, is that the Lil Wayne version?
Exactly.
He hijacked the most valuable assets of the era and rebranded them with his own flow.
And the essay confirms the monumental success of this strategy. It notes that it forced a complete change in the flow of rap.
Yeah.
He introduced new sounds and shifted the entire rap world. He built an empire that was practically untouchable.
But just as he achieves this state of absolute inevitable dominance, the narrative takes a dark, catastrophic turn.
It does.
Because the resilience of the artist and the city that forged him is put to the ultimate test on a global stage with Hurricane Katrina.
The devastation of Hurricane Katrina transcends music. It was an apocalyptic event for New Orleans.
Completely.
And the essay we are analyzing takes a very firm stance on the sociopolitical aftermath.
Right. We should clarify what the source says here.
Yes. The author of the essay points out a profound feeling of abandonment among the residents, explicitly arguing that the government turned its back when the city needed them most.
Yeah.
And whether you, the listener, view that through a lens of catastrophic logistical failure or systemic neglect, what is undeniable is the cultural reality it created on the ground for these people.
Which was what?
A community that felt entirely erased.
And the source uses a specific haunting detail to illustrate this erasure.
Yeah.
It notes that the flooding was so absolute that, and this is a quote, decades of people's birth certificates were washed away.
The symbolism of a lost birth certificate is staggering.
It really is.
It is your fundamental bureaucratic proof of existence. It is the state validating that you were born and that you are a citizen. When the floodwaters wash those municipal archives away, it is a literal and administrative erasure of a population.
Yeah.
You become a ghost in your own country, displaced and unrecorded.
So I want you to imagine losing the literal proof that you exist.
It's terrifying.
In the face of that overwhelming literal erasure, a normal response would be retreat.
Right.
Just survival. But the essay highlights that Wayne did the exact opposite.
He did.
During this incredibly dark period, he released some of the most legendary, aggressive music of his career, specifically projects like Dedication 2 and Do Drought 3.
And the author makes a profound argument here regarding that output.
What's that?
They state that releasing these culturally dominant mixtapes during this era wasn't just about career progression, it was an act of extreme resistance.
Yeah.
It was Wayne representing resilience under erasure.
Think about what that music meant to a displaced citizen of New Orleans at that time.
Yeah, picture it.
You have lost your home, your community is scattered across the country in, like, FEMA trailers.
Right.
And the government files suggest you barely exist. You feel completely voiceless. And then, out of the speakers of a laptop or a car radio, comes the voice of your hometown hero.
And he isn't whispering.
No.
Ah.
He is dominating the entire culture. He is taking the biggest beats in the world and claiming them loudly.
His voice became the undeniable proof of life for a drowning city.
Yeah.
While the physical infrastructure of New Orleans was destroyed, Wayne's relentless output was screaming, "We are here too!"
That's so powerful.
It was a cultural lifeline that absolutely refused to let the city's identity be washed away.
It's the ultimate realization of the pressure cooker we talked about at the beginning.
It really is.
The pressure reached its absolute maximum limit, and the art that escaped was just diamond hard. The essay actually notes this is the moment Wayne stopped being next up and became inevitable.
You cannot stop a force of nature with another force of nature.
No, you really can't.
So, having solidified his status as a pillar of resilience and the undisputed king of the mixtape circuit, Wayne began to fundamentally alter the technical DNA of how rap music was written and consumed.
The essay specifically points out a major stylistic shift here. It says Wayne normalized punchline-heavy raps with a ton of metaphors that were not common in rap.
Right. And to understand the impact of this, we have to look at how Southern rap was previously stereotyped.
Okay, how was it viewed?
Prior to Wayne's dominance, coastal critics often unfairly categorized Southern hip-hop as purely rhythmic.
Like just party music.
Exactly. Great bounce music and club anthems, but allegedly lacking the dense lyrical complexity found in, say, New York rap.
Right.
Wayne shattered that stereotype by injecting highly complex metaphorical structures directly into the bounce.
And the author actually connects this to a deep cultural root, mentioning the Southernness history of a call and response in music.
Right. In traditional music theory, particularly within Black Southern traditions and church music, call and response is a communal act.
Yeah.
The leader issues a vocal phrase, and the congregation or audience answers back. It creates a shared energy.
Right.
Wayne took that communal tradition and internalized it. He turned the call into a highly complex, often absurd riddle, and the response became the listener's sudden intellectual realization of what the riddle meant.
The essay says it made you listen more to see if you could be hip to what is being said.
Exactly.
I actually think of his rhyme schemes from this era as an audio escape room.
An audio escape room. I love that. Break down how that actually functioned for a listener in, say, 2008.
Okay, so you couldn't just passively nod your head to his tracks in the background.
No.
You'd be listening to a song, driving down the highway, and he'd drop a line. The beat would keep moving, he'd keep rapping, but your brain would just freeze.
Wait, what did he just say?
Exactly. 3 seconds later, the double meaning would suddenly click, and you'd literally have to hit rewind on your iPod to make sure you actually heard what you thought you heard.
He gamified the listening experience entirely.
You really did.
He demanded active, analytical engagement with mainstream club music.
Think about one of his most famous lines from a bit later in his career on 6 Foot 7 Foot.
Oh, I know the one.
He says, "Real G's move in silence like lasagna."
That's the perfect example.
Right. On the very surface, it sounds like absolute nonsense.
Yeah.
Why is a hardened rapper talking about baked pasta?
It makes no sense initially.
But then the escape room unlocks in your head. The letter G in the word lasagna is silent.
It's brilliant.
It's a brilliant, bizarre, multi-layered pun just hiding in plain sight.
And he paired this intense wordplay with what the source describes as over-the-top lyrics and personality-driven bars.
Yeah.
He was wildly expressive, embracing this raspy alien vocal tone that defied all traditional conventions of how a tough rapper was supposed to sound.
He also shifted the thematic focus, too.
How so?
The essay notes he showed a new angle, choosing to speak on self in a way that glorifies doing well, even if you came from nothing. He became this avatar of aspirational success, proving that you could reach the absolute zenith of global wealth and influence without ever sanding down your rough edges or hiding your origins.
Which brings us to a fascinating secondary arc in his career.
Yeah.
Because once Wayne perfected his formula, once he reached an untouchable status at the top of the game, he faced a choice that defines all great leaders.
What's that?
He could hoard his influence, build moat around his throne, and defend his spot against all newcomers.
Right, pull the ladder up behind him.
Exactly. Or he could build a new infrastructure.
And he chose the latter. The essay details his transition into becoming a kingmaker through the creation of Young Money.
This raises an important question, though. How does a dominant solo artist share the spotlight so effectively?
Yeah.
It is a profound full-circle moment in the narrative. We started with a 9-year-old boy who relied entirely on the local infrastructure built by Brian Williams to get his voice heard. Decades later, as an established icon, Wayne assumes that exact role for the next generation. He becomes the infrastructure.
And the strategy he employed to build Young Money was radically open.
Very.
The author points out that he worked with any and everybody. He wasn't looking for artists who fit a specific pre-approved corporate mold.
No.
He was looking for raw talent, regardless of how weird or unpolished it was.
And that openness is how he facilitated the rise of the two artists. The essay specifically highlights Drake and Nicki Minaj.
It's incredible.
Finding and signing just one artist of that magnitude is a career-defining achievement for any music executive.
Right.
To cultivate two distinct generational paradigm-shifting talents simultaneously is historically unprecedented.
What I find most remarkable about his mentorship, and you can see this clearly in how Drake and Nicki developed, is what Wayne didn't do.
What do you mean?
Well, when a massive star creates a vanity label, they usually sign artists who sound exactly like them.
Oh, true. Like mini-me's.
Yeah. They create these watered-down clones to just extend their own brand. Wayne didn't make Nicki and Drake sound like Lil Wayne.
That is the crux of his genius as an executive. He provided the platform, the financial backing, and the immense cultural shield of his cosign, but he did not dictate their artistic identities.
Think about the hip-hop landscape when they debuted.
Okay.
It was still heavily dominated by a specific brand of hypermasculinity.
Right.
And Drake came in singing, being openly introspective, and displaying emotional vulnerability.
Right.
Without Wayne standing next to him saying, "This guy is with me," The traditional hip-hop gatekeepers might have rejected him entirely.
And it was similar with Nicki Minaj.
Oh, definitely.
Female rappers at the time were often forced into very narrow, highly specific boxes by label executives.
Yeah, they had to fit a certain look or sound.
Exactly. Wayne empowered Nicki to be fiercely theatrical, to use multiple accents, to create bizarre alter egos like Roman Zelensky.
Right.
He gave her the commercial cover to be as eccentric and animated as she wanted to be, without being dismissed by purists.
He basically taught them the mechanics of how to dominate the industry, like how to use mixtapes, how to engineer memorable features, but he allowed them to apply those mechanics to their own intensely unique personalities.
Exactly.
And as the source states, they went off to change the game in the same way as Lil Wayne.
This philosophy of empowering extreme individuality is undeniably his most pervasive legacy.
Yeah.
The essay actually transitions toward the present day here, noting that Wayne remains a living legend. It highlights that he is still rapping, still highly active, and still a sight to see.
It also points out that this legacy of unapologetic self-expression has cascaded down to his own family.
Oh, right.
The text mentions that his children are stepping into the media landscape, some rapping, others exploring podcasting, carving out their own lanes in a way the author calls amazing.
That's great.
It proves that the creative exhaust valve he opened in New Orleans decades ago is still venting, still producing entirely new avenues of expression today.
So, as we synthesize the totality of this deep dive, we really have to anchor on the author's concluding thought.
Yeah, let's look at that.
It is a brilliant, succinct summation of Dwayne Carter's ultimate impact on global culture.
The essay concludes with this specific line. Before Wayne, you had to sound like a rapper. After Wayne, you could sound like yourself.
And if we overlay that single sentence onto the broader historical context we've explored today, its weight is immense.
It really is.
Go back to the murder capital of the late 80s. Go back to the marginalized, overlooked Southern voice, deemed negative and wrong.
Right.
The societal instinct and the music industry's instinct was to force everyone into a rigid, acceptable archetype. To be heard, you had to conform to a pre-existing mold.
You basically had to fit the blueprint.
Yes, but Wayne took that blueprint, threw it into the crucible of New Orleans, and incinerated it.
Yeah, he did.
He proved that pure, unfiltered, highly idiosyncratic personality is not a commercial liability. It is the ultimate cultural asset. He shifted the archetype of the hip-hop artist from a character you play to the complex, weird, contradictory person you actually are.
He took the dense metaphors, the alien raspy voice, the baked pasta puns, the absolute defiance in the face of literal floods, and he made that specific weirdness the new global standard.
He proved that a dismissed voice from the overlooked South could not only command attention, but could dictate the cadence, the slang, and the attitude of the entire world.
It's amazing.
It is the ultimate study in overcoming systemic erasure through the sheer force of artistic will.
It is a phenomenal arc. I mean, we've tracked a journey from a dangerous childhood and a desperate voicemail at age 9 to stealing the spotlight as a teenager on Hot Boys tracks. We've seen him execute a hostile takeover of the music industry through mixtapes, stand as an unbreakable pillar of resilience when his city's birth certificates washed away, and finally evolve into a kingmaker who taught the next generation of superstars how to ruthlessly be themselves.
It's an incredible story.
It really is. So as we bring this deep dive to a close, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to chew on.
Okay.
We've spent this time examining how a highly specific, overlooked, and dangerous environment shaped an unstoppable cultural force.
Right.
The national consensus categorized New Orleans as merely a murder capital, completely failing to see the resilient, complex musical heartbeat that would eventually survive literal destruction and redefine global culture.
Right. They missed the forest for the trees.
Exactly. So look around at the environments and structures that shape our world today. Think about your own industry, your own community, or even the corporate ladders you are navigating.
Yeah.
Where is there a vibrant, entirely overlooked voice just waiting for the right moment, the right voicemail to leave their permanent mark?
What a great question.
What rigid rules or industry blueprints are you dutifully following right now that someone else, maybe someone society currently deems too weird or wrong, is about to rewrite entirely?
Because if the story of a kid named Dwayne teaches us anything, it's that the most disruptive, inevitable forces rarely come from the sterile, expected blueprints.
No, they don't.
They come directly from a pressure cooker.
They really do. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.